It was my 59th birthday and all I really wanted was a simple family dinner, maybe a small cake, a warm meal, nothing fancy. But the moment I walked into the living room, the first thing I noticed was the sound of sizzling barbecue coming from the backyard and the distinct absence of any mention of me. Through the sliding glass doors, I saw my wife, Linda, laughing as she flipped ribs with Ethan, our son-in-law, while Chloe, our teenage granddaughter, live-streamed the whole thing to her followers like it was a celebrity cookout. My daughter Emily glanced at me for half a second before turning back to her phone. No one said, "Happy birthday." No one even looked up. I stood there awkwardly in the kitchen for 5 minutes, waiting for someone to acknowledge me, before finally clearing my throat and asking if anyone remembered what day it was. "We're kinda busy, Dad," Emily snapped, without looking up. "It's just another day. Can you not make a scene?" I didn't say another word. I went back to my room, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, wondering how I'd become an invisible ghost in my own home. For years, I'd worked odd jobs just to keep this house running while Linda focused on her online skincare line and Emily played house with Ethan on my dime. I never complained, not even when I gave Emily our entire savings to buy her a car, or when Linda pawned my father's old watch to pay for Chloe's cheerleading trip to LA. But somehow, I was always the burden, always the one, holding the family back. Around 7 p.m., I heard laughter again. The barbecue had turned into a full-blown party. Neighbors were invited. Chloe's influencer friends were filming content on the patio. I heard her say, "My grandpa. He's always hiding somewhere. Old people get grumpy for no reason." That hit harder than I expected. I stepped outside and tried to smile. "Hey," I said softly, "could I join you guys for a bit?" Chloe looked me up and down like I was a random homeless guy off the street. "This is private," she muttered. I chuckled, hoping it would ease the tension. "It's my birthday." Dead silence. Emily rolled her eyes. "Seriously, Dad? You're making this about you?" "He probably just wants cake," Linda said sarcastically. "We didn't buy one this year. Too many carbs, remember?" Everyone laughed. And I just stood there, smile frozen, heart cracking in places I didn't know still felt anything. I turned to go back inside when Chloe pushed past me, her phone still in hand, and I stumbled backward. My foot hit a broken piece of glass someone had left near the door, and I fell hard onto the stone path. The glass sliced into my palm. I grunted in pain. No one helped. They just stared. "Ugh, why are you being so dramatic?" Emily hissed. "Do you want us to call an ambulance over a scratch?" I sat up slowly, clutching my bleeding hand, looking around at my so-called family. The faces I'd sacrificed everything for. The people I used to live and breathe for. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't angry, I was done. Truly done. I stood up, walked into the house without a word, cleaned the cut myself, wrapped my hand in an old towel, and quietly began packing a small bag. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. Either way, it made things easier. By midnight, I was gone. I walked out the front door with a single duffel and a phone that barely held a charge. I texted the only person I could still call a friend, Mr. Morgan, the old man next door who used to bring me coffee when I did odd jobs around the block. "Can you take me to the train station?" I asked. 5 minutes later, his pickup pulled up to the curb. "They really did it, huh?" he said, looking at me like I'd just come back from war. "They finally broke you." I didn't respond. I just nodded. He drove me in silence, stopping once at a gas station so I could grab a sandwich and a bottle of water. "Where you headed?" he asked. "Seattle," I said. "I've got a lead on a job. Just need to get out of Springfield before I go crazy." "You got cash?" "A little." "Call me if you need anything," he said when we pulled up to the station. "And Frank?" I looked at him. "Don't let them drag you back." I didn't cry until the train started moving. It wasn't the pain of the cut, or the betrayal, it was the freedom. It was the sudden realization that I didn't owe these people anything anymore. I had been their cook, their chauffeur, their emotional punching bag. And now, I was just a man with nothing left to lose and a one-way ticket to a city that didn't know my name. Somewhere between mile marker 212 and 213, I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed, "This is the last year I ever beg someone to remember me." I turned off the screen, closed my eyes, and let the rhythm of the tracks carry me forward. I didn't know what Seattle would bring. I didn't even know if I'd find that job. But for the first time in decades, I wasn't waking up to serve anyone. The sun was about to rise, and it was rising just for me. The train pulled into Seattle just after 6 a.m., and the first thing that hit me was the cold, a crisp, honest kind of cold, the kind that wakes you up and slaps you across the face like life saying, "You're starting over, old man, don't screw this up." I stepped off with my duffel bag, $300 in cash, and no real plan besides getting as far away from Springfield as possible. The terminal was full of people rushing to be somewhere, heads down, coffee in hand, AirPods in, everyone moving like they had purpose. I didn't. Not yet. But I wasn't panicking. For the first time in years, no one was yelling at me to take out the trash or complaining that the eggs weren't organic. I was invisible here, and it was the most peaceful invisibility I'd ever felt. I found a 24-hour diner a few blocks from the station, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, black coffee and 2 slices of dry toast, and pulled out my phone to scroll through Craigslist listings like some broke college kid trying to crash on a stranger's couch. That's when I saw it: live-in house manager needed. Must cook, clean, and manage household errands. Private suite provided. Background check required. The pay wasn't amazing, but they offered room and board in a house on Capitol Hill. I didn't think twice. I called the number. A guy picked up on the second ring. His voice was calm, clipped, almost too polite for this kind of world. "Hello, this is Daniel Carter. Hi, I'm calling about the house manager listing." I sounded unsure, probably like a scammer, but I was desperate. "You're the third caller. Can you be here by noon for an interview?" "Yes, sir." "Absolutely." He texted me the address and said, "Bring an ID. The dogs don't bite." I hung up and Googled the bus route. I still had 4 hours to kill, so I stayed at the diner and watched the sun rise behind glass that hadn't been cleaned in at least 2 months. It was beautiful in a filthy, perfect kind of way. At exactly 11:55, I rang the bell of a modern townhouse nestled between 2 overpriced art galleries. A sleek black door opened, and there stood Daniel Carter, a man maybe in his late 30s, tall, lean, wearing a navy cardigan and holding a leash attached to a massive golden retriever. "You're Frank?" he asked, eyes scanning me like a TSA agent. "Yes, sir." "No need for sir. Just Daniel." He stepped aside, and I entered a home that looked like a magazine spread-open kitchen, polished floors, minimalist furniture that screamed, "I'm rich but emotionally detached." "You cook?" he asked as we walked past the dining table. "Yes." "Clean?" "Yes." "Can you manage grocery orders, appointments, dry cleaning, and keep a calendar?" I raised a wife, a daughter, and a grandkid who never lifted a finger. "So yeah, I think I can manage your dry cleaning." He cracked a small smile at that. "You're hired. Trial basis. 1 week. Don't make me regret it." I was stunned. "Just like that?" "Just like that." He handed me a set of keys and pointed down the hallway. "That's your room. Private bath, decent view. No smoking. Don't enter my study unless I ask. Don't let the dog eat socks." I spent the next hour unpacking and honestly smiling. I had a real bed. A door that locked. A warm shower with actual water pressure. And best of all, no one barking orders at me every 5 minutes. That night, I made pasta with roasted vegetables and garlic bread, plated it like I was some Food Network finalist, and placed it on the counter just as Daniel walked in. "You did this?" he asked. "Unless the dog learned to boil water." He blinked, then took a bite. You start full-time tomorrow. It became routine fast. I woke at 6, walked the dog, cleaned, restocked the fridge, and cooked dinner. But it wasn't just chores. Daniel didn't treat me like a servant. He asked questions. Real ones. About my past. My old job. My ex-wife. I told him I used to manage a retail warehouse, gave it up when my mother-in-law got sick, and spent the next 2 decades being the guy behind the scenes who kept things running while everyone else played main character. Sounds exhausting, he said one night while sipping wine. It was. I just didn't realize it until I stopped. You miss them? I thought for a long time. No. I miss who I thought they were. But that person never existed. Just a projection I clung to so I wouldn't feel alone. He nodded like he understood in a way most people didn't. Turns out Daniel had been divorced 3 years, no kids, and ran a consulting firm from home. Cold on the surface, but decent underneath. Like granite tough, reliable, and somehow still warm once the sun hit it right. Days passed, then weeks. I started reading again. Took up morning Tai Chi from YouTube videos. Even taught the dog how to fetch slippers without chewing them up. And for once, life was quiet. Simple. Not empty, just calm. Then one night, Daniel came home later than usual, shirt wrinkled, tie loosened, and I knew something was off. Board meeting, he muttered. They want to replace me as CEO. Why? 2 hands off. I stopped micromanaging and started trusting people to do their jobs. Apparently, that makes them nervous. I poured him a drink and said, sometimes when you stop enabling dysfunction, the dysfunctional ones call you toxic. He stared at me, then laughed. You're wasted on household work, Frank. Nah. I'm exactly where I need to be. But deep down, his words stuck. For the first time, someone saw value in Menet as a backup dad or live-in handyman but as a person. Not even my family had done that. That weekend, Daniel invited me to a small dinner party. Just 3 friends of his, all successful, chill, mid-30s types who treated me like one of them. One woman even said, "You're the most grounded person here." I joked, that's what happens when you spend a lifetime being everyone's doormat, you eventually become immovable. They laughed, but I meant every word. Later that night, Daniel found me on the balcony. You ever think about writing a memoir? He asked. What for? Who'd care? People eat up stories like yours. Redemption arcs. Midlife awakenings. TikTok would love you. I'm not dancing in front of a phone, Daniel. He smirked. You wouldn't have to. Just talk. Tell your truth. People respect that. I didn't answer, but the idea lodged itself in my head like a pebble in your shoe, irritating and impossible to ignore. I opened a blank document the next morning. Title: The Day My Family Forgot My Birthday. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, then began typing. Maybe it wasn't about revenge. Maybe it wasn't even about closure. Maybe it was just about reclaiming the narrative. For once in my life, I was the one holding the pen. A few weeks after I started writing, something unexpected happened. I got my first taste of going viral, and not in a good, meme-worthy way. It started with a knock on the door one morning while I was feeding the dog. Daniel was in a Zoom meeting upstairs, so I opened it, expecting a package. Instead, it was a woman holding a mic, a guy behind her with a camera, and a van parked at the curb with a local news logo on the side. Mr. Frank Dawson, she asked. That's me, I replied cautiously, still holding the dog bowl. You've been reported missing by your family in Springfield, Ohio. We're doing a segment on estranged parents and the emotional toll of elderly abandonment. Your daughter made a tearful appeal on live television. She said she's been looking everywhere. For a second, I genuinely thought I misheard. What? I blinked. My daughter? Yes, Emily Dawson. She said you vanished on your birthday without warning. The segment's gone viral. Find Frank is trending on TikTok, and Reddit's got a whole thread of theories. I couldn't believe it. These people, who didn't even wish me happy birthday, who let me bleed on the patio without calling for help, were now painting me as some poor senile grandpa who wandered off in the middle of the night like a confused retiree from a nursing home. The reporter kept going, clearly loving the attention. Would you be willing to say a few words for the viewers? Maybe a message to your family? Yeah, I said. Tell them Frank Dawson is alive and well, and for the first time in decades, he's finally at peace. I shut the door on her mid-sentence and locked it. My heart was pounding, not out of fear, but fury. I stormed into the kitchen and pulled out my phone, searching my name. There it was, a crying Emily on local TV, talking about how I'd been mentally unstable, always isolated, and had left without his medication. She painted me like some helpless old man with memory loss and implied I might hurt myself or others. The comments were pouring in, poor Emily, hope they find him, shame on the system for failing the elderly. But the thing that broke me wasn't the lies. It was seeing a clip of Chloe saying, I miss my grandpa. I just want him home. This, from the same girl who pushed me into broken glass. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent. I sat down at Daniel's kitchen island and opened my laptop. I typed up a short statement, attached photos of my injuries from that night, screenshots of text messages they sent me over the years, passive-aggressive rants, financial demands, complaints about me not doing enough, and I posted it to a public Facebook group for family abuse survivors. My name is Frank Dawson. I didn't go missing. I left. Because being treated like a ghost in your own home isn't living. Because the people who were supposed to care for me chose convenience over compassion. Because sometimes survival means disappearing. I hit post and went for a walk. When I got back, my phone had exploded. Notifications were coming in non-stop. The post had been cross-shared to Twitter, Instagram, and even LinkedIn for some reason. Daniel met me at the door holding his phone. You're trending, he said, eyebrows raised. Like, nationally. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter. People are reading it. And they believe you. That night, BuzzFeed reached out. So did the New York Post. I ignored them. I didn't need clout. I needed peace. But what I did do was record a video, just me, sitting on Daniel's porch, talking straight to camera. No background music, no edits. I'm not lost, I said. I'm not confused. I'm not on any medication. I'm just tired of being taken for granted. Tired of sacrificing everything only to be told I'm a burden. My daughter Emily lied. My granddaughter Chloe lied. And now they're lying to the world because they're scared of the truth, that I walked out, and I'm never coming back. That video hit a nerve. Within 24 hours, it had over 1 million views. Comments flooded and strangers telling me they saw their own fathers in my story, men saying they finally felt seen, women apologizing for how their families treated their dads. It became something bigger than me. Meanwhile, back in Springfield, Emily and Ethan were spiraling. Someone leaked the original police report, where I'd declined to press charges for the injury Chloe caused. Neighbors chimed in, confirming I'd been the only one doing chores, driving Chloe to school, cooking, cleaning, and fixing everything. One woman posted a Ring camera video of me taking out her trash when I thought no one was watching. The public opinion turned fast. Suddenly, Emily wasn't the grieving daughter, she was the villain in a real-life soap opera. Chloe's schoolmates started bullying her. Ethan got laid off from his real estate firm due to reputational concerns. Amy Deer, cheating wife, tried to spin her own version on Facebook, blaming early onset dementia for my paranoia. But the internet was already ahead of her. A TikTok detective found an old Instagram photo of her and Robert Miller, her lover, vacationing together in Cancun while I was home recovering from the flu. The comments tore her apart. She doesn't miss Frank. She misses the unpaid labor. One user even made merch t-shirts that said, Frank Dawson deserved better. I didn't buy one, but Daniel did. And he wore it unironically to the farmer's market. I thought about deleting everything and going offline again, but Daniel convinced me to lean in just enough to take control of my story. You don't have to become a brand, he said. Just don't let them rewrite your truth. So I agreed to do one podcast, just one. It was called Invisible Men, hosted by two retired social workers. I told them everything. The years I spent as a caretaker, the money I gave up, the birthdays forgotten, the silent dinners, the insults muttered just loud enough for me to hear. I cried during the interview. And I didn't apologize for it. Because real men cry. Real men break. Real men walk away when they've been pushed too far. That episode became their most streamed content ever. After that, I got messages from people offering jobs, housing, even marriage proposals from lonely boomers in the Midwest. I didn't reply to most. But I read every word. Because every message reminded me that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I was finally free. But just as things were calming down, a new twist arrived, a legal notice. Emily was suing me for emotional distress and reputational damage. I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. Daniel read it and said, "They're not after money." Theory after silence. But I wasn't scared. Because now, I had receipts. And I was ready to use them. The lawsuit hit the internet faster than wildfire, and to be honest, I thought it was a joke at first, like someone on Reddit made a parody legal doc for laughs, but no, it was real, stamped, and filed in Franklin County by Emily's new hotshot attorney, someone who used to be a TV anchor turned family law crusader. The complaint was ridiculous: intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation of character, and reputational sabotage. It read more like a fanfiction rant than a legal document, accusing me of orchestrating a viral smear campaign and intentionally provoking the public to harass a grieving daughter. Daniel and I went through the entire thing sitting on his porch with lemon iced tea and a laptop, and by the end, he said, "If this goes to court, I hope they let me live stream it." I wasn't worried, not because I thought the court system was flawless, but because I had truth on my side, and more importantly, screenshots. Hundreds of them. Text messages of Emily calling me a worthless old bum, Linda demanding I pawn my watch to pay Chloe's braces, Chloe joking that I looked like a crypt keeper in a group chat with her friends. The irony of them crying about reputation, while I was the one picking glass out of my palm in silence just months earlier, was almost poetic. Still, I didn't want a drawn-out court battle, so I made one move: I went public. I recorded a second video, raw, unedited, just me again, sitting in Daniel's backyard with the dog asleep at my feet. I didn't choose to become a trending hashtag, I said. But since my daughter wants the world's attention, let's give it to her. Then I read the lawsuit line by line on camera. After each ridiculous claim, I held up proof, receipts, messages, even voicemail clips where Linda screamed at me for forgetting to buy almond milk. The video was 19 minutes long and hit 5 million views in 2 days. By the end of the week, Emily Dawson Lies was trending, and people were dissecting the court document like it was a Marvel trailer. Internet sleuths discovered the attorney had a history of taking on high-profile but ethically murky family drama cases, and a few former clients came forward saying she encouraged exaggeration for media exposure. Meanwhile, back in Springfield, the pressure started cracking the Dawson household from the inside out. Ethan was photographed yelling at reporters outside their home, Chloe was suspended from school after threatening another student who called her Grandpa Slayer, and Linda, who'd stayed surprisingly quiet, was suddenly exposed in a Facebook group chat for planning to sell my old tools and donate the money to a more useful charity. Someone leaked a family group text where Linda typed, "He left, we can flip this and cry poor." Social media loves sad women. That screenshot killed whatever sympathy she had left. I thought the fallout would slow down, but no, it snowballed. Ethan's brokerage firm fired him officially, citing breach of ethics and online conduct. Emily was asked to resign from her PTA board. Even Chloe's brand deals for makeup sponsorships got pulled when a major influencer made a cancel recap TikTok titled, "When You Treat Your Grandpa Like Trash and Sue Him for Going Viral." I tried to stay out of it, I really did. But when someone made a fake Instagram in my name, offering grandpa advice for $5 a DM, I had to say something. I posted on my verified account, PSA, I'm not charging for advice. I already paid for it with years of my life. That got another wave of support, and out of nowhere, I started receiving gifts. Real ones. Fans sent books, hats, even a pair of hand-stitched slippers that said, "Best Grandpa Ever." Daniel looked at the pile of mail and joked, "You're either about to get a podcast deal or a sitcom." And wouldn't you know it, both came knocking. A production company offered to option my story. The idea? A 6-episode dramedy about an invisible man who becomes America's most beloved runaway dad. I turned it down. Not because I didn't need the money, but because I didn't want my pain to become entertainment for people who'd never been overlooked, ignored, or emotionally erased. What I did say yes to was an invitation to speak at a conference. The National Men's Mental Health Alliance was hosting a summit, and they asked if I'd give the opening talk. Me. Frank Dawson. The guy whose family didn't even give him cake on his birthday. The guy who used to walk through life like wallpaper. I practiced for weeks. Daniel helped me trim the speech down to 10 minutes, and when the day came, I stood on stage in a blue blazer someone had donated from a luxury thrift collective and looked out at hundreds of people, mostly men, but also wives, daughters, sons, people who'd lost someone either by death or distance. I'm not a hero, I told them. I'm just a man who finally had enough. Enough of being spoken to like I was furniture. Enough of being everyone's scapegoat. Enough of hiding my worth just to keep the peace. You don't have to wait until 59 to find your voice. But if you do, that's okay too. Because it's never too late to walk away from a place that no longer sees you. They stood. They clapped. Some cried. And for once, it wasn't pity I saw in their eyes. It was pride. A week later, Emily withdrew the lawsuit. No apology. No explanation. Just a quiet filing to dismiss the case with prejudice. But the damage was done not to me, to them. Their house went up for sale. Rumors flew that Ethan and Emily were separating. Chloe's online presence dried up completely. And Linda? She vanished. No Facebook posts. No angry rants. Just silence. Daniel handed me a beer on the back porch that night and said, "You ended a dynasty." I didn't want to end it, I replied. I just wanted to be free from it. And for the first time since I left Springfield, I realized I truly was. It was strange how silence could feel heavier than words, how the sudden lack of noise from Emily's end, the absence of posts, live streams, tantrums, or legal threats didn't bring peace but a creeping sense of unease, like the eye of a storm just before it spits lightning. After the lawsuit was dropped, I thought maybe they'd retreat, lick their wounds, learn something. But I should have known better. The Dawsons weren't the kind of people to reflect, they were the kind to implode. And implode they did. News came in pieces, not all at once. A former neighbor messaged me a photo of a foreclosure notice taped to the Dawson front door, red bold letters spelling out what years of emotional rot had already proven that house wasn't a home anymore, just a shell of entitlement and bad karma. Another message from someone I barely knew in Springfield said Ethan had been spotted moving boxes alone into a cheap rental on the outskirts of town. No Emily. No Chloe. Rumors were Emily had kicked him out after accusing him of leaking the lawsuit online to sabotage her redemption arc. The same redemption arc that never made it past the TikTok drafts folder because even Gen Z influencers have limits. Chloe, once a rising micro-influencer, became a digital ghost. Her accounts disappeared. No more selfies with sponsored energy drinks. No more sassy grandpa jokes. Nothing. And then came the headline that made my hands go cold: Robert Miller found dead in Motel 6. It was buried in the local news, barely a blip on the national radar, but I recognized the name immediately. Robert, the man Linda had brought into my house while I was still living under that roof, the man she tried to recast as a stand-in father figure after I walked out. According to the article, it was ruled a suicide. Pills. No note. But they did find a half-empty suitcase, a burner phone, and a printed screenshot of the viral video where I'd listed off all the ways my family discarded me. His name wasn't even mentioned in it, but I guess guilt doesn't need direct invitation. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Hello," I said. There was static, then a voice I hadn't heard in over a year, fragile, bitter, shaken to its core. "Frank." I knew instantly. "Linda." She didn't bother with pleasantries. "He's dead. Robert's dead." I stayed silent. "I thought you'd want to know," she added. "You still think everything that happened is my fault?" "No," I replied calmly. "I think it's all of our faults. But mostly yours." She let out a breath that was half sigh, half sob. "You don't understand what it's like being the only one holding the pieces while everyone else throws stones." That line was so rich with irony I almost laughed. "You threw the first stone, Linda. You just didn't think anyone would throw back." "I didn't call for a lecture," she snapped. "Then why did you call?" "Because I'm alone." There it was. The truth. The unspoken fear. The ugly outcome of all her choices. Emily won't talk to me. Chloe's in a facility now, some behavioral rehab school for high-risk youth. I signed her over when she threatened to crash the car with both of us in it. My grip tightened on the phone. I didn't respond, because what was there to say? Sorry. Good. Justice. Nothing felt right. "They're all gone, Frank," she whispered. "And I keep thinking maybe you're right. Maybe it would have been better if you had died in that house. Because at least then I could still play the grieving widow. Now I'm just the monster in everyone's story." I let the silence hang between us for a beat before I said, "You're not a monster. You're just a person who got really good at pretending love was a transaction. And when I stopped paying, you threw me out like expired milk." She didn't reply. I heard her breath catch and then the line went dead. I didn't call back. I didn't block her either. I just let it sit. That night, I sat with Daniel on the back deck, beer in hand, the Seattle skyline blinking in the distance, and told him everything. The call. The death. The meltdown. "Do you feel sorry for her?" he asked. I took a long sip. "No. I feel sorry for the man I used to date, a guy who thought any of them would have cried if I disappeared." He nodded, then reached into his bag and pulled out a thick envelope. "You've been getting letters. Real ones. Not emails. Not DMs. Letters." I opened them slowly over the next few days, handwritten pages from strangers. A trucker who said my story made him finally forgive his estranged dad. A single mom who showed her teenage sons my video and said it changed the way they spoke to her father. A woman in hospice who said my words gave her permission to stop apologizing for wanting peace. It hit me then, this wasn't just about me anymore. It hadn't been for a while. I'd become something else entirely, something unexpected, a mirror people held up to their own regrets. And that was both a gift and a burden. But there was one envelope that stopped me cold. No return address. Just, "To Frank," written in faded pen. Inside was a single photo, younger, standing in our old backyard, holding a 6-year-old Chloe on my shoulders, both of us laughing like idiots. Tucked behind it, a note, "You weren't invisible. Not always. I saw you once. I just didn't know how to hold on to you. I'm sorry." I knew it was Emily. Her handwriting hadn't changed. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was something. And in a weird way, it felt like the final page of a chapter I'd been rewriting for far too long. I didn't call her. I didn't write back. I took the photo, slid it into the back of a frame that held a picture of me and Daniel's dog napping on the couch, and put it on the mantel. A reminder. Not of pain but of distance. Of what once was. Of what never will be again. Because the truth is, you can forgive someone and still never let them back in. Closure doesn't need reunion. It just needs choice. And I finally had mine. The seasons shifted fast in Seattle, like the sky didn't owe you a warning before the rain came, and before I knew it, I was standing at the threshold of my 60th year with more peace in my chest than I'd thought possible for someone who once crawled out of his own birthday dinner like a ghost. No fanfare this time. No cake. No fake family hugs or pity smiles. Just Daniel, his dog, a quiet brunch of cinnamon rolls and coffee on the balcony, and a handwritten note he slid across the table that read, "You mattered, even when they pretended you didn't." That hit harder than any applause ever could. I'd lived long enough to see my pain turned into fuel and my absence turned into noise, and yet somehow I'd landed on the other side of it, not broken, just rebuilt differently. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I wasn't out to prove anything to Emily or Linda or the digital mob that still had opinions on my life. I'd already won, and not because I embarrassed them on a live stream or survived the headlines. I won because I finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. After the letter from Emily and the fallout from Robert's death, things around me didn't just quiet down, they matured, like life was finally matching the age of my heart. Daniel's consulting work picked up again after a brief slump, and he started traveling more. One night over dinner, he asked, "Would you want to run the house while I'm gone? Hire a second assistant? Maybe even renovate the guest wing?" I raised an eyebrow. "You're promoting me to house CEO?" He laughed. "You've been that since month one. I'm just making it official." And so, I became something I never thought I'd be again: reliable, but on my own terms. I hired a young vet named Jordan as my assistant, taught him how to roast chicken, fold sheets properly, and track inventory like it was a military op. He reminded me a bit of myself, wide-eyed and trying not to sink. "You're the calmest person I've ever worked for," he said once. "Most guys your age are either bitter or bitter and don't know it." "That's because I already bled out," I told him. "Now I just make sure no one else does." Around that time, a local nonprofit reached out asking if I'd speak to a group of men going through late-life divorces and custody battles. At first, I declined. I didn't think I had anything left to say. But then I remembered that inbox full of letters, that conference where grown men cried just because someone finally put their ache into words, and I knew I had to show up. The room was small, 10 folding chairs in a strip mall backroom, but the air was thick with exhaustion and fragile pride. I told them the truth. That sometimes your wife doesn't love you back. That sometimes your kids are only nice when your wallet's open. That you can pour every drop of yourself into people and still be met with, "What else you got?" But I also told them this: your story doesn't end because someone stopped seeing you. Your worth isn't measured in birthday cakes or Christmas cards. You are allowed to begin again quietly, stubbornly, joyfully. And if no one throws you a party, throw your own. When I finished, a guy about my age stood up and said, "You just made 60 sound like a reset button." I smiled. That's exactly what it is. That talk turned into another. Then another. Soon, I was speaking monthly libraries, community centers, even Zoom groups for men overseas. Not motivational speeches, just real talk. And I found something strange happening along the way. I started to heal. Not in a dramatic Hollywood ending kind of way, but in a quiet, bone-deep relief sort of way. I stopped flinching at the sound of my old ringtone. I stopped checking my mentions for hate. I stopped dreaming of Springfield. One day, I even passed a little girl in the park who looked like a younger Chloe, and instead of aching, I just nodded politely and kept walking. I'd made peace with being the villain in their version of the story. I didn't need to correct it anymore. A few months later, a man in a crisp gray suit showed up at Daniel's doorstep while he was away on business. "Are you Frank Dawson?" he asked. "Depends," I said cautiously. "Who's asking?" He handed me a letter, embossed and formal. Inside was a handwritten note from a law office. Linda had passed. Quietly, without noise or ceremony. According to the estate, she'd left everything what little remained to a local shelter. No funeral. No family contact. Just one instruction: do not notify Frank unless he asks. I didn't ask. But now I knew. And I sat with that news the same way I used to sit with my coffee, slow, careful, letting it burn a little before it cooled. I didn't cry. I didn't toast her memory. I just stood on the porch for a long time, watching the sunset over a city that gave me a second chance, whispering a quiet goodbye to a woman who once loved me, then forgot how. Maybe that was all we ever were, two people who stopped speaking the same language. The next morning, I opened my laptop and wrote one final entry in the memoir draft I'd been chipping away at. If you're reading this because your family erased you, let me say what they never did: you mattered. Not because you made money or fixed light bulbs or remembered everyone's birthdays. You mattered because you tried. You mattered because you stayed soft even when life turned you hard. You mattered because you didn't give up, even when the people you loved let go first. You're not invisible. You're just waiting to be seen by the right people. I hit save. Then close. Then stood up and went to water the plants like any other day. Because the beauty of starting over isn't the noisy, it's the quiet after. And for the first time in 6 decades, I wasn't afraid of the silence. I belonged in it. I'd earned it. And I wasn't going back.